Hi, guys. I wanted to take a moment to chat about my experience as a parent. So, when I gave birth to Gabriella, my daughter who has atypical Rett syndrome, initially we didn't know that there was anything wrong. And over time, Gabby was showing delays in her development. So, she was initially diagnosed with global developmental delay. And I had so much inner child baggage within me, so much pain from my childhood that I couldn't quite deal with all of the feelings that were coming up for me. I couldn't quite process them. I couldn't break them down. It was just too much. It was overwhelming. And I remember when we did our MRI and we had our first visit with a neurologist, and our neurologist told us that our daughter had or was showing white matter disease or some form of white matter disease. I went home and got on the internet, started researching, and I don't know if you know this, but white matter disease, when you Google it, it's scary what comes up, right? Rett syndrome was probably among the better things that Gabby could have if she had white matter disease. Most of them were, early death, extreme health difficulties and challenges. I mean, this was a massive shock to my system because now I was no longer grieving having a typical developing daughter. Now I was possibly facing the fact that perhaps I would outlive my daughter. I mean, I cried for weeks. I couldn't handle it. It was too much. I couldn't handle the pain. And I'm sharing this with you right now because I want you to understand that I hear you. I am you. I've been through all of this. And I found coping mechanisms in the early stages not to deal with my pain. My coping mechanism was denial. I denied that there was anything wrong up until I was given a diagnosis. And even then, I was in action mode. I went into warrior parent. I went into, I'm going to find a solution to help my daughter. There was nothing that was going to stop me, and I made it my mission. And, this can be a great thing in many ways because I was in action mode and I was going to help her. However, my intentions were not to help her so that she could reach her innate potential, express who she is, and so forth. It was more about, well, how can I make her as typical as possible? So I still wasn't accepting her or seeing her as she was at this stage. And I think it's important to mention this. You can go into this phase of being the warrior parent, but it's not until you start dealing with your pain that you can truly move into that space of embracing your child, embracing this new path, shifting your perspective. So I wanted to mention this with you today because my awakening was accidental in many ways. Well, it wasn't accidental because I don't believe in that, right? I believe everything happens for a reason. However, I started training for a modality that I felt was really going to help my daughter. And within that training, I experienced massive transformation. And it wasn't expected. I went in open and I allowed this transformation to occur. And I wasn't pushing my feelings down so much because I was moving through the body, right? I was studying the Annette Benyal method neuromovement. So I was getting to know myself better through the moving body. I was upgrading my brain through the moving body. But at the same time, I was releasing all of these suppressed emotions. And I remember one of the segments was all related to the chest, along the sternum, this area. And we started really opening that up. And I had a big rush of feelings come up. It was like, 30 years of my life were just rushing up. And I cried the whole week. I couldn't stop myself. It was just, this massive release. And I think in that moment, without wanting it, without inviting it, was the moment I started dealing with my pain. Because before that, I was suppressing it, pretending I was strong. And I was strong. I was a warrior, but I wasn't facing all of those wounds. And so I was just carrying them with me, and I was not going to be able to embrace my child, show up for my child the way she needed me to, even shift my perspective within the context of this experience if I didn't do the healing. So that moment, that breakthrough, that awakening for me changed everything afterwards, because then I was on a path to become my best version. I started getting rid of all the layers, one layer after another, healing, going back into my childhood to understand, to deconstruct why it was so hard for me to accept my daughter as she was in the early stages. This was bringing up old feelings of unworthiness within me, feelings of not being enough from my own childhood. You see, I grew up feeling like I needed to achieve to be seen. I needed to achieve to be loved. This was my understanding as a child, not because my parents wanted me to feel this way. My parents gave me love, but perhaps not in the way that I was needing it. And so I began to feel like I needed to achieve. I became the overachiever. And so in some ways, subconsciously, I felt like, well, if my daughter can't achieve, how is she going to feel loved in life? That's the deeper wound that was coming up for me. But it takes so much time to get there, to get to that deeper root. So I wanted to share this with you today because it's important for you to understand, that I started where all of you started. I wasn't awakened. If anything, I was incredibly unconscious when this all began, and experienced massive transformation throughout these 7.5 years now that I've had my daughter. I'm a completely different person, different home, different friends, different everything, different job, different career, different trajectory. Everything's different. This life aligns with who I am, with my soul, with my heart. She showed me that. And all the children that I work with show me this. So I just want to end with saying how grateful I am to have gone through this. It was so painful, incredibly painful, but I feel like the most painful moments are the moments where we can break through, where we can awaken, where we can finally change, shift, evolve. So know that there is an opportunity here for amazing change, for a new life, if only you're open to the possibilities.